What's going on? My name is Shane Lowe, producer of Scene Change, and I would like to welcome you to part 2 of our audio description live panel recorded last July at the 2021 National Federation of the Blind National Convention. We hope you enjoy it, and don't forget to check out the other episodes of Scene Change available as well. We put one out the 15th of every month, so stay tuned to our YouTube, our Anchor, and anywhere else you get your podcasts for more episodes of Scene Change.
Welcome to Scene Change, a podcast by the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. All about equality, opportunity, accessibility, and the arts. Here, you'll learn adaptive techniques from performers in the know. We are changing what it means to be blind, one stage at a time. Thank you for joining us today.
So, Joel, when a theater is starting out with something like audio description, would they sort of contact you and take one of your classes, or are your online resources sort of like enough for them to be able to start?
That's one component, certainly. Everything Everette said is right on. But yes, you need to be sure that the people to do the description are well trained. There's a big difference between description that distracts and description that enhances. And you need to have people who know how to do that description. I think the best way is to do it in person. That's where much of my travel comes from, by providing that training. But that's another reason why the book is out there, The Visual Made Verbal. And then, yes, there are more online training opportunities now, given the COVID crisis and such. So, yeah, they need to know. And if they haven't invested already in assisted listening equipment, they need to have that equipment. Oftentimes that same equipment can be used for audio description if it's a dual channel. And, there is expense, but it's a matter of priorities. Do you want to be inclusive? Are you open to the public, meaning everybody in the public? Well, you need to be inclusive then. You need to the accommodations. Grants are available, from private companies, individuals, foundations, and government money as well, that will help jumpstart a program. It's readily available, and I would encourage folks to explore that.
This is awesome. And I did not forget about my other question for you, Joel. I still have that here. But I would like to check in and see if there are any more questions from the audience.
Yes. Yeah. So I have a few, and I thought I would kind of combine them. Do you want me to ask all three of them right now, or one at a time?
Just ask one. We have time.
So real quick, Rachel Grider was wondering where you sign up for the class that was mentioned earlier.
Oh,
for blind people or sighted people, or
blind or sighted people. Yeah. She's referring perhaps to my class, which
probably both August, you and Roy.
Yeah, August, absolutely. August 2nd through 6th will be 5 half days, and I would simply go to the Audio Description Project website. There's a big article there about it, and it'll give you a link to sign up for the class. It'll be virtual this time, of course. acb.org/ADP. Roy, provide your information about doing the voicing.
Sure. So right now I'm using an email address just to get things going. It's my name at heyhy.com. That's Roy Samuelson at hey.com.
Hi, this is Shane, the producer of Scene Change, and I wanted to pause that just for a second because there were a couple of internet breaks that we weren't able to fix. That email address is roysamuelson at hey.com.
And I'd also like to say how important that this is just for the voicing. It's taking those scripts that Joel and his team have crafted and bringing those to life in a way that doesn't get in the way. It's a nuanced performance. It's a lot to do with when writing is done so great. You can imagine going to a Shakespeare play, and at the end of the first act, when intermission comes, you could be crying because you're so moved by the performances, or you could be crying because you do not want to enter this theater again for the second half because it's bad.
It's true.
The writing is the same. The writing is Shakespearean, and it's the same writing, but a bad performance can make it horrible. And in the same way, I think that that's a fair comparison to when it comes to voicing. And obviously that's my focus, but beyond my own efforts, it's making sure that blind people are included in this and not just, hey, I've got a good voice. The work that goes into performance, specifically in voice, is not just having a good voice in the same way that a concert pianist is not going to be said, oh, that was such a great concerto. Where did you get your manicure? It doesn't make sense. So like there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think that with this pandemic that we're coming out of, there's so many opportunities for virtual training, whether it's taking an improv class. I know that the Actors Access Academy that is a part of NFB does train blind people. And that's all about intention. It's all about what that performance is. And audio description is not less of performance. It's more a wire act. It's that sort of thing. And when it comes to making sure that blind professionals are in this work, that's incredibly important, and making sure that they're paid their value, that as audio description grows beyond the mandate, that absolutely necessary mandate that the FCC has given us, that for all the content that we have, beyond the mandate, there are technological advances and cultural shifts that allow this work to not how cheap can we make it, but how great can we make it? And to see it as the opportunity that it is to make it as great as it can in parity to sighted audiences. So I'm sorry, how many soapboxes am I allowed, Lizzy? I think
you are allowed all the boxes today. So we've thrown all the soapboxes at you and you are standing on them. So
it's not Jenga.
So
next question.
Caitlin,
Yes. Yep. Okay. I actually have a few more. So, all right. So I'm going to kind of combine a few into one here because
no, honestly, you're good. You're good.
Well, I think they work together. So
okay.
There are a few questions about how do you decide what audio description to use? What words to use for the script, especially in certain situations, such as an animated movie where there's a ton of action happening all really fast and all kinds of stuff. It doesn't have to be animated, any kind of action movie where there's tons of stuff happening, or the commercials that were mentioned earlier where it's all words. How do you fit that in? Or something like Hamilton that has, song after song after song. Where do you fit in the audio description, and how do you decide what to say and what to use?
You know what, Caitlin? I love that question because that fits right into the question that I wanted to ask Joel. And
Perfect.
The way that I worded it was, how do you rate so much in such a short amount of time?
Well, it's not a matter of so much as in quantity. It really is about the quality, the words that you choose. The great 17th century French mathematician and philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote a long letter to a friend and ended it with, "I've only made this letter longer because I have not had the time to make it shorter." Audio describers must know how to edit, how to get the bang buck, rather than say walk. In the time that it takes to say walk, you can tell somebody what they're doing and how they're doing it. If you say prance, stroll, stomp, whatever. So it's about language to a great extent. And some questions have been about, well, how do you decide what to describe? Well, that's really important. That's its second fundamental. And what I tell people is to ask themselves, what is most critical to an understanding, he points to his head, and an appreciation, his hand is on his heart, of the visual image. Zero in on that. Let everything else go. Just like Everette said, you simply can't get everything in there, explain everything that's happening visually. So you have to be selective. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Haha, maybe. I've yet to meet a blind person who wants to hear somebody describe a picture with 1,000 words. So I think the describer would say that a few well-chosen words will be most effective at creating an image in the mind's eye.
That's very true. I don't even know if I want a picture described in 100 words. I'm very much to the point. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right. Let's see, Caitlin, do you have any more?
Yes. So kind of similarly on that, I don't know if there's anything more to be said, but how do you, strike the balance during music performances?
About Hamilton specifically.
Specifically about that. How do you strike that balance of talking when there is singing or other talking going on?
Well, yeah, it's a similar kind of thing. You're right, Caitlin. oftentimes you will let a chorus be sung for a musical in particular, obviously. And when the chorus is repeated, you use that time to provide precious words of description. There are going to be choruses and then refrains, and there oftentimes is space within or between where you can provide description. People go to a musical, people go to an opera to hear the music. So you don't want to get it in the way. Less is more. You want to enhance, not distract.
I totally agree with that.
Love that.
Caitlin, how many more do you have?
I have a couple more. I just have to say, at Pittsburgh Opera, they provided audio description, and it was fabulous.
Great.
I was the first time I'd ever been to an opera with audio description, and I loved it. So it can be done, and it can be done well. Yes, a couple more. So
how many?
Two more for now.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm going to jump in with a question, then we'll turn it back to Caitlin, and then we'll see these raised hands. Thank you guys for being so patient. So both Joel and Roy are familiar with the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. They do grant awards, and they've recently created a new category, which includes audio description, which Roy was nominated for in 2019. So first we'll start with Joel, because I believe this will be your first year attending. Is that right, Joel?
First year with audio description,
with audio
recognizing audio describers. And in fact, I'll be doing a session on YouTube about that this evening. You can look it up under SOVAS, SOVAS.com, I believe. I might be wrong about that. It might be .org. But that's the neat thing. Rudy Gaskins, who runs SOVAS, has just been amazingly wonderful at being inclusive and understanding that audio description is a critical part of media production. And we need that kind of visibility, forgive the expression, if you will, to get it understood more and to get more of it. So SOVAS, SOVAS. Roy, you can add to that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
About 3 years ago, I submitted for a SOVAS award for an audio description track for a narration in the narration category for that exact purpose. It was to outreach into the entertainment. I noticed that there was that connection that means so much when it comes to our audiences and the entertainment industry. And there were a lot of companies that were doing it super well. But what about those other opportunities that might not be aware? So as of, I think a few years ago, maybe last year, there were more submissions. And beginning this year, and beyond just a phone call, Rudy and I have had countless hours of conversations and advice and consulting and advising. And, with Joel's help, he's also created the audio description for a promo piece that came out within the last few weeks. But these are the sorts of things that make such a difference, that these connections with the entertainment industry, I believe, does help. It makes something a little more aware. I mean, the Audio Description Awareness Day, we're going to, in 10 months, celebrate our third year of the Audio Description Awareness Day. And these are the kinds of connections that we can continue to forge. And as Joel said, Rudy has been emblematic and modeling how this connection can make a difference. He's including alt text. He's making sure to capitalize the first letter of every hashtag. He's making sure that the videos do have audio description. We went through his website for submissions. We talked about if there's going to be judges for these new categories, the 3 new categories, to make sure that there's blind judges that are included in it. It's not just a bunch of sighted people. So these are the sorts of conversations that are now happening. And I think with the technology opportunities, as well as the cultural shifts when it comes to performers with disabilities, that these are the kinds of things that I just get so excited about.
Everette, what do you think the benefits are of having of including the category of audio description in awards such as this?
Roy said it so well. Roy actually helped me become a judge for an upcoming SOVA award. So I'm now listed at that, and it's exactly what Roy said. Inclusion. We need to be included in these, especially we're the consumers getting this content, consuming this content. So why shouldn't we have a say in what we like and what we dislike? And I think it's important for us to have that opportunity and have that voice out there. So I'm excited about that. And excited about the future of awards like this. I think it's very beneficial, very needed, and overdue.
Long overdue. Now, I'm not familiar. Do they already have, for example, audio description awards for things like, I don't even know if this would be like appropriate, but like for things like the Emmys or the Oscars, like if there was a company who described, you know, a certain movie, like would they sort of have a, you know, describer versus describer sort of kind of a thing?
Joel, I can hear you laughing. Take it.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Lizzy. The audio description project is working hard on that. We've been in touch with the Motion Picture Academy to plant the seed for recognition of audio description, and I think will bear fruit. Sooner than later, even. I'm not sure. I'm not counting my chickens, but I will say that about, I'm going to say 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the Emmys did acknowledge at least the creation of audio description and its promulgation on television. And they awarded 4 honorary Emmys to the Narrative Television Network, to WGBH, to the Washington Ear, and I'm forgetting the 4th, ouch. But there were 4 Emmys, maybe it was just 3. And that was the beginning of some recognition, but it's long overdue to really have it become more mainstream.
Wow. Well, maybe one of my last questions is, what do you think the future of audio description is? And that very well could be it, especially if everyone collaborates and we really push for it, you know? Caitlin, questions from the audience? Your questions that you have?
Sure. Yeah. So one question, well, sort of two aspects, two things people are wondering. What about audio description for music videos? Is there anything for that? And also, how do you get, if you can, get audio description on YouTube?
Okay, so go ahead.
The end all and be all of description for music video is really, again, from a blind person. Stevie Wonder created So What the Fuss, which was first or maybe the second. I have a good friend, Jeff Moyer, also blind, who did a description for one of his videos. But Stevie's gets a good bit of play. A music video, So What the Fuss, was written by WGBH under Stevie's supervision. And then, you know, it's like what we call integrated description. You can't watch the music video without it. The music video and the description are of a piece. And Stevie even had the rapper Busta Rhymes voice the description because it just made sense. To do that. I recommend it highly. Just put that in the Google, So What the Fuss, Stevie Wonder. And if you have trouble finding it with, I'm not sure you can even find it without description, but if you can't, I can send it to you. I put my email address in the chat. Music video, it begins and ends with Stevie, I think. With YouTube, it's a little trickier. Our friends at the Smith Kettlewell Institute in San Francisco developed something called UDescribe, which allows folks to upload to the cloud something like any YouTube video, and anybody can, hopefully with some training, go to that individual video, write description, and then download them and pair them together. That's otherwise, you know, there are so many, billions of YouTube videos, they're not going to get described commercially. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would ask you all to lobby for is that YouTube, Facebook, all of those streaming services need to use video players that allow you to toggle on and off audio description.
Yep.
They exist, they're out there, and all of them have a toggle switch for captions, not for audio description. And that future of audio description, all those video players should have that. It should be just a matter of course.
Yeah, that's the thing we've been working on hard with Google, who owns YouTube. We've been lobbying hard with them about that, and I think we're going to see something about that very, very soon from what I'm hearing from Google. And Joel is exactly right. udescribe.org is that website. So and it's all spelled out, YOU fullworddescribe.org. So, and it's a lot of fun. I do agree with Joel. I think it's better if a describer is trained before they just go ahead and write whatever description. It helps a lot because I don't think if my dad tried to describe something, it wouldn't work. So you definitely need someone to have a little bit of training.
Wow, that's when I think about, I'm still stuck on the Busta Rhymes with Stevie Wonder because I hadn't heard about that one before, but I'm just picturing it in my head. And I've just been I'm picturing Busta's voice with Stevie's soulful singing, and Busta's very raw, and it's just interesting. So I honestly, I'm enjoying talking to you all, but I can't wait to go look at that video.
It's great.
So let me get my head back in the game.
This one takes a similar direction, but a little bit different. What, if anything, is being done since the fact that the FCC only mandates 60 or 70, top markets have audio description? What do you do that so much of the rest of the country is being left out?
Everett, you want to take it?
Sure. You need to lobby. If you're in a market that's not getting audio description, you've got to get your voice heard. So you've got to talk with the FCC. Will Shell is the person you want to talk to. He handles any kind of complaints coming from the FCC. I'm happy to give you his email. I don't have it right at the top of my head, but I'll send it out to you. His name is Will Shell, though, and I know you can find his email and his contact info at fcc.org. But he will take those complaints. There is official forms that you can fill out in the FCC, but I like to go right to Will. And the more complaints that Will gets, the more he can start doing things with that. And I also think it's going to be Congress. We're going to have to lobby Congress to do this, because the FCC can only do so much, and your Congress has to do the rest for us. And that's what we pay them, or we vote them in to do that job, and they get paid to do that job for us. And we just need to remind them of that on a consistent basis.
I want to tag on to that, Lizzy.
Go ahead.
It's so critical. Everything Everett said was right on point. But the reason we have audio description on television at all is because the FCC promulgated a rule in the year 2000 that mandated it. Well, that rule was not sanctioned by Congress, so it was struck down in the courts. But in 2010, President Obama signed the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act. Great. It put those rules back in there, but the rules require, even now, some years later, even now, it's only at 7 hours per week for the top 9 broadcasters, and only in 60 metropolitan areas. And the law doesn't allow for increases beyond that. So what Everett said about Congress is critical. We made no progress really in the last 4 years. I think in this new administration now, not to get political with y'all, it's just reality. It's just reality. I think now is the time to join with the NFB, the ACB, AFB, to push for a CVAA 2.0 that not only will mandate more jurisdictions, they'll mandate more hours, and they'll put in, as they did with captioning 40 years ago, they'll put in a requirement that the level must increase every year by a certain percentage. That's what captioning does, and that's what the law did, and we are now at 100% of programs have captioning. At 7 hours per week, 9 broadcasters does not even equal 1% of all broadcasts out there. The UK is mandated at 10%, and they do 20% of all broadcasts have audio description. And if I may, one other point, because there was some talk. There was some talk about, the expense and such. Oh my goodness, the expense to produce description is minuscule compared to just the catering budget of a film. That is an absolute fact. And the reason I stress that is because there is a movement that will bring more and more use of text to speech to the audio description production process. ultimately that puts out of business every blind person out there who has been trained and does wonderful work as a voice talent. It puts Roy out of business. It puts me out of business to a certain extent. Text to speech has its place, and people who are blind use it all the time. It used to be, of course, JAWS or Window Eyes or whatever, but for feature films, for dramas, for narratives, whether they were produced years ago or they're produced now, you require the nuance that a human voice talent brings to description, and that synergy between the writer and the voice talent. There's no text-to-speech program out there that does that. And we need to be aware of that, because, it may be that it's coming. It is already here for many of Amazon's past videos. We don't want to see it expand further. That's my true belief.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Let's see, Caitlin, was that all of your questions?
Quick question for Joel. Was the class mainly for people wanting to write the audio descriptions or voice the audio descriptions?
It's primarily for folks who want to write, but that includes people who are blind, who work as audio description consultants. As I mentioned before, we touch on the voicing, but if someone is really strictly interested in voicing, I send them to Roy. But Roy knows, of course, that the best voice talents understand what goes into the crafting of audio description. So Roy might send him back to me after he's finished with his class. I don't know, but so it really, we cover all of it. But if for advanced work, let's put it this way, in vocal skills, Roy Samuelson's the man.
You see, what I'm picking up from this entire episode of the show is that you start off with Joel, you learn to write it. Then you go to Roy, you learn to voice it, and then you send it to Everette, and he'll tell you if you did good enough, if you did good enough or not.
I don't know about that.
Beyond this being a multi-level marketing scheme, I'd love to.
Right.
I'd love to go back to some points of AI. May I have a moment or two for that?
Sure, go ahead.
Beyond putting Joel out of business, this AI stuff does have its place. And I love how he put that. One of the things that I like to compare, particularly with sighted people when it comes to AI, is that, first of all, I have no interest in reading your daily calendar or your email address. Like, that is a really great place for AI. But when we're telling a story, there's emotional elements to it. And that nuance is both for writing and for voice. There is, like I'd said earlier, a high wire act when it comes to the not only the inflection, but also the intention that an actor brings. That AI voice is fascinatingly conversational. It sounds like a person, but no sighted person would put up with a 4-hour audiobook of Siri or Alexa. And the reason is that it's conversational. There is something that's very conversational about this. Oh my gosh, the Siri is now going to explode because I just said the A word. You all know what I'm saying. I apologize if anybody didn't put me on. I did hear that. So she's going to be going off for a little bit here. But my point is that, God, the takeover is happening right now. Maybe this is just payback. But when it comes to this conversational read, it is conversational, and they do a really great job of that. What they also need to do is make sure it's the inflection. For example, somebody could be, she runs into the pit of hell. He dies in her arms. That's conversational. It's not appropriate. There's intention there, that there's meaning behind that. And it's, she gives him the red apple. Well, Joel, you've used this in your book. Is it she giving her the red apple as opposed to the green apple? Or is she giving her the red apple as opposed to the peach? Or is she giving him the red apple? Or is she giving as opposed to stealing? Or is she giving him the red apple as opposed to the other dog that might be in the next room? That's inflection. So I completely agree that AI can be programmed to give inflection, to give intention, to give speed, to give rate, to make sure it goes at the right place, to make sure that it's and each of these elements, so far I've mentioned like 5 or 6 of them. That's for each sentence of audio description. You multiply that by a 90-page script, no problem. As long as the sighted experience is the same as the blind and low vision experience, I think we're at a good place. But you know that no one would find that that's necessary, that taking the time to program that and to keep up with all the software updates and all the glitches and stuff, why not take advantage of Joel's experience as a performer for the many years that he has been a performer, a theatrical performer? Why not take advantage of the blind performer who has studied this work and use those skills and cut some corners in that way and say, you know what, this person's already invested their time and strategy and skills to do this performance. Maybe in this area, we don't need it. And again, I'll go back to the example of that conversational read of a 4-hour audiobook. Nobody would put up with it.
Everett, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, I would just say, as a blind individual, there's a reason why the National Library Service is so popular amongst the blind community.
That's true.
We love our audiobooks.
Sure.
We love our human readers. And so I feel the same way these two do about AI in audio description. I think it has its place, but I definitely don't think it replaces the human narrator in that human aspect that I very much want in my content.
All right, and then it's human readers all the way. I'd like to take one of those raised hands.
Yes.
I don't mind.
Do you want me to help out with that?
Who do we have?
Janet.
Yes, please.
Janet.
Okay, I want to say hi to Joel.
Hi, Joel.
I haven't seen you since March. We took the class, 8 of us took his class, and I would recommend it. I am blind, but as a writer, you can do so much being blind and knowing editing in seconds. It's just an outstanding class. But if I can just say one thing, Joel, I didn't tell you in March because I didn't know then, but someone did ask a question. I've been listening. And jw.org is now having their audio described videos in dozens and dozens of languages. This summer, the Powerful by Faith Convention. No one mandated that we had to do that. This was out of love for blind people. The convention is incredible. The videos on creation and flowers and human body. Everything is audio described. It's just, Joel, it's the best one ever.
I just learned about it today, and it's amazing. In almost 50 languages, all the audio description. Just amazing, Janet.
It's incredible. And I will just say, if any of you want to take this class, it's something very needed. And Everett, I'm saying hi to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna, for your comment. All right. Hi, Tina. Welcome to the show.
First off, great show. I'm looking forward to this going in the podcast feed. This is awesome. And I definitely want to agree with both Joel and Roy that artificial intelligence in AD has its place when it's very, just the facts. Like, if it's a cookbook recipe or something, I think most of us don't want to hear, it doesn't have to be necessarily a professional voice. It can be heard just the facts, and that's where artificial intelligence has its place. One question that sort of hit me in the head is, how do we deal with new technologies? Because one thing that would be interesting is, how do we keep with new technologies such as apps? I just love the idea of you bring your own device and headset, say, to a theater, because one of the really cool things that I've been working with is bone conduction headsets, which allow you to still hear what's happening in the theater and hear the describer, especially if you don't like earbuds. So has there been any research into looking into how to use, I'm thinking of an app like Gala Pro.
Yeah, Gala, I'll jump in quickly. Gala Pro from Israel is used for live theater in New York on Broadway shows. It's I don't know that it has gone beyond that particular location for movies and for television, and actually for anything you're listening to, as long as it is with audio. There is an audio description track. Look up Spectrum Access. The Charter Communications bought ActiView, which was an amazing app that listens to what's happening on stage, on the screen, and you down to that app the audio description track. It syncs the two. So you listen through your own smartphone, your own earbud. You could listen to a movie at home. Nobody else has to hear the description because you're getting it by yourself. It could also be used for alternate languages. It's used to enhance sound. They can even include the sign interpretation. Spectrum Access, that's what you need to look for.
Spectrum Access. Thank you so much for your comment, Tina.
Excellent.
And Melia Jensen. Oh, I know Melly Jensen from Maryland.
Melly.
Hey, Melly.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just have a really quick question. I work for an agency in the federal government that produces videos, And I've had questions about audio description. Is there like a quick tips list that I would be able to share with our communications department to make sure that they're doing this well?
Yes. The Title 508 requires all government agencies to make their media that they produce accessible. And too many government agencies don't quite know that they're supposed to, or they haven't been able to find the budget. The National Park Service does an amazing job with it. A few other agencies. I would recommend perhaps your folks could send me a note at jsnyder@audiodescribe.com, and I'll put you in touch with some other. Well, Pat Sheehan is the 504 coordinator, a blind man for the Veterans Department, Veterans Affairs, and he can guide you further on how to build up audio description in your agency.
Hey, Melly, that sounds like an awesome idea for you to, an awesome way for you to get in touch with the Performing Arts Division, and then we can connect you with Joel, and then you can have your question answered.
Hello?
Right.
Hi, who's that?
My name is Denise. I'm not sure if you're speaking to me or not.
Sure, we're speaking to you now. Go for it.
I think.
Okay, I apologize if I'm asking something that's already been addressed because I came in late, but my interest is in opera, and I understand that there are some places where opera is being described, which would be great, but I'm also wondering if there's some way that the description could be combined with a text-to-speech feature to handle the subtitles?
Yeah, that's a good question. Surtitles or subtitles in a film, say the film, take Paradise from a couple years back. In Korean, the subtitles needed to be voiced for an English-speaking audience. That's just part of the audio description. So it might even be done by a second voice talent. It might be done with tone. Now I'm reading subtitles. Now I'm describing something like that. I think surtitles, I don't know that you would need to program TTS. I'm just not a big fan of TTS.
I was going to say.
Obviously, in the arts. Specifically, but that's the kind of thing that the opera describer would include the voicing of the surtitles along with their description. And again, if you send me a note, jsnyder@audiodescribe.com, I'll put you in touch with the finest opera describer in the country, Mary Hanks, who really developed the program for the Houston Grand Opera in Texas.
That is so cool, Joel. I would love to see that opera that you mentioned. It's very fascinating.
I would love to take Brittany Savage's question.
Hey,
next.
I love Brittany Savage. She can be on my show any day. Welcome to the show, Brittany. And Darian Tucker will try to take you next.
Hi, Liz. It's so great to see you.
Hey.
Hey, girl. But yeah, so I'm Brittany Savage. I'm from Colorado, and I just had a couple of things. And I came in late, so if have been addressed, I'm sorry. But I was like, I love description, so I'm blind, but I take care of kiddos, and they've watched audio description their whole life. And my 2-year-old at the age of 2 was doing so many describing words because he just thought that was so normal in life. Like he would say, that yellow bus is going so fast down the street at 2 years old. And so it was really awesome. But then, my question is, so I know that Netflix is starting to describe shows that have ended on TV, like Glee was never described when it was airing, but now on Netflix it's described, and same with Breaking Bad. But like, for example, The Walking Dead is not finished. It's coming close. But how can we get description while it's still airing on TV, even though like the last 9 seasons haven't, or is that even a possibility? Because I love the show, but it's super, super visual. And so I miss a lot of stuff.
Let them know that you're out there, that you're paying for a streaming service or what have you, a service, and you deserve to have it be accessible. That's the one thing. I'm sure Roy or Everett can add to that. But I do want to just say one thing quickly. Audio description for kids, is actually funded by the Department of Education. For 6 years, my staff wrote, I voiced, we produced audio description for the first time ever for 6 Sesame Street, a huge success. Audio description can help children build literacy because they hear word comparisons, they hear synonyms or similes. It helps them broaden their own verbal experience. So it's good for kids who are blind, but it's great for really anybody who wants to build literacy.
I also want to, I echo what Joel said with the networks, but I also think it's important that most of the producers for shows like The Walking Dead and the actors I remember Sesame Street in The Walking Dead, they have Twitter feeds. Tweet them. I do that all the time, and you'll be surprised at the response you'll get back, and get them knowing about that you're a blind individual and you want to enjoy their show, but their show doesn't have audio description. It was funny. Levman is the writer and producer of The Magicians, and he and I now tweet each other regularly, and we get them to be audio described. So that's something you want to do as well, because the producers, they work for those networks, and so they will do more as well for it. So that's another thing you can do.
Brittany,
I love that idea.
Brittany, real quickly, with respect to kids and everybody listen, I know Richard Greenman is on this call. He founded a group called Imagination Video Books. Check out, go to the website, Imagination Video Books. They take books that are illustrated, kids' books, and turn them into audio described videos. It's an amazing concept. It's so needed, and I think you should definitely take a look. And for those of you that have kids, take advantage of Imagination Video Books.
Imagination Video Books. That's so cool. Now, did we ever get Darian Tucker?
I don't think so. I think he still has no audio, but we have two other questions. If you've got time. All right. So Lolly, and then we'll administrator's iPhone. So Lolly.
So I want to speak to quality control. I saw something last week about the artificial intelligence being used for captioning and the deaf community getting somewhat frustrated with the accuracy of it. And I think we can take some lessons from them. They are, I think, starting an advocacy effort around this. It's because a lot of times people in Teams and meeting applications, platforms, this is used and it's not as accurate. So when it comes to quality control, I think it's an important thing for audio description. And I think sometimes we don't give it enough credence. I wanted to hear both Joel and when it comes to whether it's TTS, whether it's the writing. I happened to watch just to check in on the Hallmark description over the weekend, and what I noticed was, number one, it was TTS, and number two, the writing wasn't very good. So I'll be done at this point. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a fascinating study about TTS within the last few years that included audio description where the actual voice talent read the correct pronunciation of the film, which sounded wrong out of the context of the film. And the TTS pronounced it correctly to the listener, but incorrectly according to how the entire film was pronouncing it. These are the kinds of things that a quality control specialist, particularly a blind quality control specialist, would never allow to get through. So thank you for asking that question. And as more companies recognize the value, as the pivot again goes from how cheap can we make it to how great we can make it, that the incentive here is we are not trying to avoid a backlash. We're trying to provide the best. And directors do that. Set decorators do that. The professional sound mixers who spend several hours working on one scene with collaboration with the director care about their work. And that's just to make sure the levels are right, how loud certain aspects are, whether it's the background voices or the actual dialogue and such. So that kind of care is being given to film. And I love how you said this, Lolly, that this is something that whether the deaf community is a little bit louder, or maybe it's the entertainment industry is becoming more aware that there really is an opportunity here. I'd love to hear what Joel or Everette have to say about that.
I've done a lot of talking, and I can certainly emphasize the need for the human voicing the nuance that a human voice can bring. Roy has provided several examples of that, and it's just so true. And I think, honestly, the National Federation of the Blind, along with the other service organizations, they need to make their voice heard. Go to Amazon, let them know. Go to others that are Hallmark, others that are using TTS, and say, no, this is not the place for TTS. You're shortchanging us. And as Roy says, sighted folks wouldn't put up with it.
There's a flip side to that too, Joel. And I love the idea of that kind of feedback, but there's also positive feedback. When you hear a voice talent or the writing or something like that, to give that feedback.
You bet.
Unfortunately, sighted people don't have to do this. It's just a given. That is an unfair advantage, and it's yet another barrier that sighted people provide, intentionally or not. It gets in the way. But until we get it to this point, those kinds of messages do make a difference. That when people hear back and say, gosh, that was really great audio description, it's the reason that I tuned into it, and it's the reason why I'm watching this show, and it's why I'm subscribing to your service. That those kinds of messages are equally powerful. I'm not discounting the importance of constructive criticism, in other words, complaining about TTS. But there is something to giving that positive feedback too, and those kinds of messages do get up the channel because people never get that. And those kinds of things can stay.
So it is 45, and that is the time that I've asked our panelists to be here. I know that we have one more question. If this person promises to make it so fast, like lightning fast, and we can take that question. But if it's going to be longer,
administrator's iPhone. Yes. Can you make it really fast?
Okay, I'll be really quick. How do you get
Go ahead.
How do you get Will Shell to actually answer you if you send him an email or a voicemail or anything? Because he does not answer anything.
This is Everett. If he doesn't answer you, please tell me, because he will answer to me. So
I am telling you right now.
I think he will answer you, but if he doesn't, please let me know.
He's real good about it, and it's Will WILL.Shell SCHELL @FCC.gov.
Yep, that's his email.
And on that note, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists for participating, and to our audience, both live and joining us on the podcast later on this month. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to pass it along and check out others. Thank you all for joining us. This concludes Scene Change.
I'm Caitlin McIntyre, president of the National Federation of the Blind Performing Arts Division. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Scene Change. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and visit our website at nfb-pad.org. There you'll find links to our social media, membership, and resources for blind performers. Thanks to everyone who makes this show happen. Scene Change is produced by Shane Lowe, Chris Nussbaum, Seun Choi, and Precious Perez, with music by Ryan Strunk and Tom Page. Remember, you can be the performer you want. Blindness is not what holds you back. We'll see you next time.